So this is a 1968 Porsche 912, no particular trim level. They made these from 65 to 69, and then they made the 912E in 1976.
What was the difference?
The 912E was fuel injected. So they changed the body styles in 76, obviously with the Department of Transportation and all that. So those cars would have impact bumpers, where these cars do not. These cars are considered the short wheelbase cars, the 65s to 69s. Narrow body, short wheelbase. They are just under 1,600 pounds. And it's got a flat four-cylinder in it, 1.6 liter, right at 102 horsepower. You know, it's not a lot of horsepower, but it's also, you know, a 1,580 pound car, and it's rear engine, rear wheel drive, and it handles like a go-kart.
What is the difference if the uninitiated look at this and say, well, it's a 911?
Mm-hmm.
What are the major differences between the 912 and the 911?
There are zero differences. So if you were to look at a 1968 911, it is identical to this in every way until you lift the engine. The 6-cylinder that's in that instead of the 4-cylinder that's in this. They built the Porsche 356. They were phasing that out, and they were going to come out with the 911. They were fearful that the 911s were going to cost too much, so they introduced the 912. So this 4-cylinder engine is based off the 356 SC engine, if I'm correct. They did a little bit of tweaking to it, but it's the same 1.6 liter 4-cylinder. And the 912s, they released the 911s and the 912s together, and the 912s outsold the 911s. I've read different stories, but the 912s outsold the 911s, I think, until like 67 or 68 when the 911s caught up in sales. The 912s are obviously not as much horsepower, but they're lighter, and a lot of people describe them as being more balanced and more driver friendly. I've never driven an early 911, so I can't speak to that from personal experience. I'd like to have both, but obviously the 912s are a lot of fun. They're a great driving car. Like I said, they're identical in every way to the early 911s. I mean, the only way you'd know the difference from the outside is, you know, the 911 would have 911 on the back, and the 912 has 912.
How long have you had it?
I have owned this car just under 3 years. When I purchased it, it had a 2012 inspection sticker on it, and it had been pushed outside of a garage and had sat there about 2.5 years while I attempted to track down the owner, because it didn't have plates or anything on it, no identifying marks. And so I sort of stealthily had some pictures and were asking some people that I thought may know who it belonged to. I didn't want to be in a scenario where I said, hey, do you know this car? And all of a sudden they're like, yeah, I know exactly who owns it. And they call them and buy it out from under me. All of us car guys are scared of that, so we only keep it within our inner circle. But I finally made contact with the owner. He initially was not wanting to sell it. So the story he told me was that he purchased it, had sent it to this garage. I believe he had a stroke shortly after he bought it, so the car sat. And then the guy at the garage needed the space, so he pushed it outside. And of course, that started my pursuit of trying to track down the owner. And I finally did through various sources that I'm not going to reveal. But we had a good conversation, and I told him to kind of keep me in mind if he was ever interested in selling it. We went back and forth for a while, and ultimately he decided to sell it to me. When I purchased it, one of the previous owners was going to track it. And what that means is anything on the car that adds weight that doesn't add to it going forward is taken off the car. I mean, the glove box lid, the radio, the ashtray, the lighter, the seats had been changed out for Recaro race seats. The door panels were off of it. The door tops were taken off of it. The carpet was taken out of it. Anything that can be removed easily is removed to just try to lighten it up that much more. So I have spent the better part of 2.5 years sourcing parts. And in the Porsche world, everybody seems to be kind of crazy obsessed with getting everything date stamped correctly. So every Porsche part on this car has a date stamp on it. Some people, they want to look behind the steering wheel and make sure that it's dated, you know, the production date of the car, 668 or something. That did not interest me at all. I mean, I've got, you know, that steering wheel was used, I think, in like 66, 67, and 68. I think it's like a December of 67 steering wheel. So I didn't get obsessed. I wanted to put period correct stuff in it, but I didn't worry about date stamping. This car would have originally come with painted steel wheels with chrome hubcaps, and the guy, I'm assuming, that was going to build it to track it, put the Fuchs on here. Somewhere in a building or an attic or a basement somewhere are the door panels, the armrest, everything that was taken out of this car. I've got to believe in my mind that that is in somebody's basement somewhere. I would love to find the actual original parts and put those back in here. But in the meantime, I have sourced, you know, an ashtray, a correct glove box, a correct lighter, period correct seats, even though they're the wrong color. They're supposed to be red. I put red carpet in it, red square weave carpet, because you cannot get red Perlon. So red Perlon was a special order, but you can't get red Perlon anymore. So the closest thing I can get is red square weave. My father actually found the seats. A guy in Canada had them, and they were listed as rat rod seats. And about 3 paragraphs down in the description, the guy said, you know, I had these seats for one of my 912s, put new foam kits, put new black leather seat kits on them, put them in storage to work on the car. I've since sold the car, forgot I had the seats. I'm cleaning out storage lockers and found them. You know, you don't get caught in a galloping horse looking at the seats. The paint color is called slate gray, and obviously it came with red interior. The paint looked like a chalkboard. I guess from sitting outside and getting weathered, it was white. I mean, it looked like an old chalkboard at an elementary school. Yeah. It was that faded and that dull. My dad kind of worked his magic with some compound and worked and worked and worked. What you see today is how it turned out. You know, if you look at the paint and you want to nitpick it, the paint's oxidized. There's places where it's chipped. There's places where it's cracked. But, you know, I've got a couple of restored cars and they're almost impossible to enjoy because you're worried about where you park it, rock chips, what somebody else is going to do to it. And this car is just fun because it is perfect driver quality condition, and that's what I do. I drive this car. You know, I've got the 2 Land Rovers, the 2 Triumphs, and I drive this car far more than all of those combined annually. Everything about it, I mean, it shifts better, it drives better, it steers better, it stops better, it accelerates better, the doors shut better. It's just that much better. Everything works. I don't have to worry about if my light's gonna fall, you know, go off, because not that my lights would go off in any of my British stuff, but that's always the running joke. Lucas, the Prince of Darkness. But this car is just so much fun. This past weekend was probably the most fun I've ever had in it. A group of us, like I said, we met in North Carolina and did drives for 3 days. It was about 4 hours down there and about 4 hours back. I ran 70 miles an hour all the way down the interstate, drove it pretty hard while I was down there, and drove it back and averaged just a shade over 28 miles per gallon. Given that it had sat for a long time, jacked it up, drained all the fluids, took all the wheels off, rebuilt the calipers. It's got 4-wheel disc brakes, so I rebuilt all the calipers, took all the rubber lines off and replaced those with braided stainless steel lines, changed the oil, the filter, changed the transmission fluid. Don't have to worry about antifreeze or any of that, or any of the radiator hoses. Put a new fan belt on it, changed the plugs, changed the plug wires, put a distributor cap and a rotor button, and started it up. You know, it started pretty quick and it ran great. You know, I just kind of fine-tuned it from there. When I bought this car, one of the previous owners, assuming that was the guy that was going to track it, had put an MSD distributor in it, MSD box, and a tach adapter to convert it over to electronic ignition. And that ran great and it did fine. It just always bugged me when I looked in the engine compartment and saw those big boxes, you know, bolted to the side. I just recently took those off and installed a correct distributor, correct coil and all that before my last trip. It performed flawlessly. You know, none of my cars are garage queens. I mean, even the ones that I've completely restored from the frame up, they're meant to be driven. I don't have these sitting in a garage preserving them for anybody else. I think if you're going to be a good caretaker, you drive them, you enjoy them, you use them, and you pass them on to the next person when that time comes. And hopefully I'll take good enough care of it and it'll continue to have a life of its own long after I'm gone.
I know you own several cars.
Yes.
Is this one, since this is the one where I said bring your favorite,
right?
And you showed up with this one, is this the last one that would ever go, or are you not that attached to any of them?
It is the most user-friendly. It is the most comfortable to drive. We could hop in this car right now with your camera equipment. I would drive it to California and not even think we would have an issue.
That's cool.
So it is my favorite. Would I sell it? I mean, you know, I'd like to say no, I would never sell it, but I'm not I'm not a collector.
Right.
I like to enjoy my cars. And I think this one right now at this stage in my life, this is the one I enjoy the most. It's the one that when I go down to the garage to go get the fun car, fun car Friday as I call it, this is the one I tend to gravitate to. I really like the car, and right now I have no intentions of selling it, but who knows what tomorrow, next week, next month will bring. Another 912 may show up. You never know.
Right, see you later.